Hey everybody, Edo here, and I am excited today because I have Rob Thompson from Cackleberry Games on the line. Say hello, Rob.
Hey everyone.
And you actually and your team have a Kickstarter live right now, Gardens of Babylon, funded day one, I believe. Um, but it wasn't the first time we were in touch because you were very active in getting information from the community and sort of figuring out how to get this campaign set up. And, who knows what it would have been to what it is, right? The
Right.
impact of all of that. But one of the things that I thought would be great to talk about for people who watch this channel would be or is sort of that process. Like briefly summarizing Cackleberry and how you got to this game, but in particular, that sort of we're going to go to Kickstarter and then we're actually going to Kickstarter period.
Sure. Yeah, and thanks for having me on. Been a big, I watched a lot of your episodes and learned a lot, from the videos and whatnot. And we actually, so yeah, the context is, have been living overseas for the last 3 years. So I was living in the Mediterranean island of Cyprus, working at a video game publisher, Wargaming. And while there playing Dungeons and Dragons, we met a board game designer named Stavros. He just introduced himself, like, hey, I design board games, played some D&D with him. He brought over some of his prototypes, one of those which was Gardens of Babylon, which was just a really great, accessible, fun, filler Euro game that was fairly far along. And so we decided to form Cackleberry Games. Our team owns probably 300 board games. We play a ton of games. And so we thought we had pretty good instincts about that this game could be a good fit for the market, especially with a lot of miniature games coming out and games that take a lot more time. We thought this was a game that has pretty good depth and complexity, but is also fairly accessible.
Sure.
And it's language independent as well. So we formed Cackleberry Games January of 2018 and attended UK Games Expo.
So just a year ago.
Yeah, just a year ago. And that was when the game was really just the mechanics were, we didn't have any art. It was really just a designer art at that point. And it was really just the mechanics that we were focused on, and just knew we wanted to go to Kickstarter. At that point, we were thinking actually of just doing like the base game without any stretch goals, without any Kickstarter exclusives or anything like that. Our strategy changed over time as we learned more about the market and talking to backers and other publishers. And so it was a lot of learning and listening and really trying to understand the Kickstarter audience, because it's not necessarily the broader board game audience, right? It's a very different subset of that market. Yeah.
For sure. Well, and so like in terms of like, so to dial into those learnings,
Yeah.
right? You mentioned stretch goals and exclusives, but when you look back and you have, again, you're a week in, the campaign's you might be 2 weeks in by the time this video posts, but this video posts before the campaign closes, and I'll put a link in the description for people curious about the game. But when you look back, now that you've sort of launched into the market, you've seen the response on Kickstarter and are in the mix of it, what do you think are some of the key adjustments or changes or things that you added that you felt really were meaningful and impactful on the campaign page or in terms of what you were launching, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think the big thing from that we did that was different was actually doing custom meeples and seeds to provide a component that was actually different, that would be on your table, that you could be excited about and proud of. Otherwise, it would be a Euro game with no unique components and meeples, which we thought would have a much more smaller audience, or people would be less excited about on Kickstarter, because there wouldn't be really anything that would be different from the retail version. So that was one of the key adjustments we made, was actually doing those custom meeples and seeds in the deluxe version. Yeah.
I see. So okay, so you've done a deluxe, and actually you're saying the retail version will not have those components.
Correct. And we see that's the deluxe is, in terms of, we have 815 backers, 561 of them are deluxe, and 68 are standard edition. And there's some others, spread out throughout the other pledges. And
Sure, sure.
with whatnot. But it's from a very large amount of people are excited about the deluxe and what that has to offer. Getting those unique components that they won't be able to get somewhere else. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the things that you see pretty common is that not only do you get that sort of upgraded pledge, but you set an anchor point to your pricing, right? So you're like, hey, the regular game is worth this, but this deluxe
Exactly.
version is you get all this other stuff for just a $5 more, $10 more, whatever it is, $20. And that sort of rather than people necessarily anchoring to the marketplace or to other Kickstarters, all they can anchor on the same page, which is super powerful. Now, the thing I'm curious about is that to say, are you going to make any of that available in the retail market, or is that all Kickstarter exclusive?
It'll be available. The leftovers will be available on our shop and in conventions, but our retail strategy is really just the retail product. And then we have other expansion ideas as well, aside from the Syrian expansion that will be available in retail. But everything that's in the deluxe edition will be just for the deluxe edition, and then it's just a small amount that will be available later on as well. But the retail strategy is the retail game, standard meeples, standard components, because we think that it can stand alone in retail with that product. But for Kickstarter, when you look at the games that are successful and you look at the motivation of why people are backing it, is a collector's audience, we
Sure.
believe. And so we wanted to provide something that was collectible and that could serve that need that audience had. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think you'll have to see what um, what the retail reception is once you get to that stage, as well as sort of the retail market is rapidly the level of competition in the retail market is skyrocketing, and the level of execution of products in the retail market is skyrocketing. So it'll be interesting to see because it's a effective and common approach on Kickstarter to do the deluxe edition, the step up. Those are really powerful ways to engage backers. I know for Pencil First Games, I've moved away from that because now that my retail business is larger, understanding the challenges that they're in retail is a part of it. But it'll be interesting. I mean, obviously, Paramount is the gameplay experience. Paramount is the cover art, which I can't speak to the game because I haven't played it, but I can speak to the cover. You have a fantastic looking box, and that'll go a long way. So that was the deluxe edition. What are some other things that you sort of consider that you have felt has been really effective?
Yeah, good question. We spent a lot of time thinking about how we can get attention before the campaign. And that was a big focus for us as well because we were an unknown entity, right? When you launch a game, I imagine you have an existing audience of people who follow you on Kickstarter, right, or that are in your mailing list, or you can make videos. For us, we did spend a lot of time, I think, trying to build that audience ahead of time, and that also meant getting reviewers on board that we thought would be a good fit for the game and that their audience would be excited about the game as well. I think that was a big part of that. In terms of the actual the campaign itself, we filmed our own how to play video, right? We wanted to make sure that we were explaining the rules accurately because there are a lot of nuanced rules that could be mistaken. And so and that allowed us to actually share that how to play video with our reviewers and previewers of like, hey, here's actually how the rules are done. Because although we do have a final rule book, there are some rules that are nuanced, and you really have to make sure that are right. So that was important. We also saw on Tabletop Simulator, we were featured on the front page as one of the most played games in the last couple of weeks. So that's been getting some pretty good reception. I think we have a couple hundred visitors and whatnot there.
Yeah, I mean,
I think those are the main pieces I think that we did. Yeah.
In terms of it is true that today I have some different channels that with Pencil First Games I can leverage when we do a Kickstarter. But when I was doing Lift Up, I didn't have any of that. Right, I was equivalent to where you guys started. But I give you credit. I mean, I think that from the visibility of the outreach, you guys were more proactive than I think I was with the liftoff in terms of not only seeking advice from the community, which I was certainly doing, but sharing and here's how we're progressing on our video, and here's the art and how we got it, and you sort of building that, you know, trail of crumbs
Right.
forward, I guess, whatever they want to call it that way, towards the Kickstarter. Um, would I mean, you mentioned the tabletop simulator
And
and
I
the
would
front
add,
page. Go ahead.
yeah, I would also just add, as I thought about it, two other big decisions we made were we completely translated the rules in Italian, French, German, Spanish, and now Dutch, and those are all available in PDF, in the rulebook format from day one, and they will also be available in the box as well for those backers. And that was also something, from our initial conversations that we are, it is a Euro game. We are getting an Euro audience. The cost per click on Facebook for this game for U.S. audience versus European audience is a lot lower for European audience.
Sure.
And so, and we were getting a lot of good feedback on that as well for the language, and then also solo rules as well from day one. And we could have put those as stretch goals, but we thought that if you're a German backer, and maybe the stretch goal for your language is 20,000, and the stretch goal for a French backer is
Yeah, no,
25,000, doesn't really feel great. It just feels a little artificial. And same for the solo rules. Like we already had it designed. It's already on the box that it's 1 to 4 players. We wanted to be honest with our audience there,
yeah,
and yeah,
you can't stretch goal something like if you're going to say it's 1 to 4 players, you don't want to have solo as your stretch
yeah,
goal, right?
yeah,
And at this point, solo play is absolutely a feather in your cap when it comes to audience and engagement. So if you're gonna do it up front, do it from the
yeah,
beginning. I highly recommend that. And again, looking at your backers, right? You have 411 from the United States, 50 from the UK, but then you have 40 from 41 from France, 40 from Canada, 40 from Germany, 30 from Cyprus, and moving down to Italy, Spain, and Sweden, right? So you have a pretty good international mix in there in
yeah.
terms of your volume of backers. I mean, at the end of the day, you're looking at what's your total? So you're looking at about 50% of your backers being from outside of the United States, right? Which is a pretty big distribution to non-U.S. backers. And presumably that comes from the engagement. Also, you're clearly have a big Cyprus backing, but
Oh yeah,
that's fitting. Um,
yeah.
so
That's definitely Stavros.
I wonder if I've got one backer I've ever had from Cyprus, but I'd have to go look. Um,
Yeah.
so okay, so you engage the community, ramped up to launch. I guess the next question I would just have, so just talking to you as a new creator, you're coming through, doing this for the first time. Um, what were some of the surprises or unexpected notes or memorable moments from, day before launch / launch day?
We redid our voiceover like a couple of days before the launch, which was pretty nerve-wracking. Our writer and one of the other founders of the team, Jordan, we thought he could do the voiceover, and he did a great job, but our mic quality was not as great as we hoped it would be. Luckily, we had our friend Chris Cantrell, he's the designer of Mechs vs. Minions from Riot, called him up, and he really came in clutch, just sent us the recording of the voiceover, and it's a much better voiceover. So that was definitely one of the highlights before we launched, and I think it really improved the quality of the video. And it's one of those things that, I know you're a producer, you kind of weigh the cost benefit analysis and the risk of everything like that. But I think it really paid off for the video. I think for sure. Another maybe highlight. I mean, we had Stavros actually. We flew Stavros out to Las Cruces for the launch, which was really great to talk to him about his future pipeline of products and also just talk about how we can take maybe the 2.5D aspect of the game to other genres or other settings. And it was great to also just have him here on the day one of the campaign. We were doing last minute page edits, and he was in Photoshop, and just getting everything getting everything ready. And then, on launch, I was just really surprised there were definitely at least 20 people who were like refreshing Kickstarter, because when I hit refresh, we had several $1,000s in like the first couple of minutes, which I didn't expect. I was pretty bullish that we had an audience built, but I was really surprised with the amount of people that were just like waiting and that supported us. And then just the family support from Cyprus, and we have the $500 pledge for the Cackleberry Founders Club, where you get every game we make in the future.
Oh,
And
right. Yeah, that
yeah,
was
those
an
actually were
interesting one.
gone in the first 12 hours. And actually 6 of them, we have no idea who they were. They weren't our friends or family. They were just normal backers. And, that was surprising as well.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like, I mean, I know it's not that common of a thing, but I do know, I remember, I can't remember which company did it previously, but maybe it was Stonemaier
Thundergriff.
Games? Oh, Thundergriff
Thunder,
does it.
yeah, I did it for one of their early ones for 250, but then it had 3 like deluxe versions as well. Ours is a little bit higher, but we wanted to test it out, and we did share it for feedback with some of our former colleagues and people who are been supporting us for a while, to get their thoughts on if they would do it, and they were supportive. Yeah.
Well, I guess the question comes, you said Thundergriff, is Thundergriff still doing it?
No, well, I think you can only do it for your first product, because I think it sets imagine you backed it, or at least that's my assumption, is if you allow people to get this early, if you provide it again, it could actually lessen the value for those earlier backers, because they're taking that risk on you. So I think,
Oh, that's interesting that you think of it that way.
yeah,
I mean, I would assume, I mean, one, at some point, there's probably a recognition that, like, there's a company that makes 3 games and there's a company that makes 30 games. And once you're like
sure.
making 30 games, it might be a loss leader. But I feel like if you're saying, hey, we have this exclusive club, anyone can join, it just costs a lot. As long as you don't make it cheaper to buy into it,
Yeah,
then,
that's a fair point, actually. I think I just
um,
made the assumption. Yeah, that's a good point.
and then also, you might, especially if it's a go forward thing, the people who are in your first campaign who started earlier are getting, game one and game, but then people who buy in game two maybe don't get game one. I know
Right.
there are other versions of that sort of club and exclusivity. Stonemaier Games, is focused around. They do it a little bit differently. I forget what they're called, but like Stonemaier Champions or whatever. But
Right.
that's not as much about like ongoing free stuff, so much as like discounts and first word and early access and that kind of community. So it'll be interesting to see as you grow and you build it. Okay, so that you were talking about that tier, you were surprised by how fast it, not only how fast it sort of moved, but just in the immediate moments after you opened it up, how fast it was moving. Now that you're
Yeah.
a week out, what other, I mean, you should be, I haven't looked here. Let me do we're going to do this. We're doing it live. Hold on. If I go to
Yeah.
Kick Track
Get the
here.
get the Edo projection.
Well, no, I mean, we'll see, right? I mean,
Yeah.
hopefully you know this, but I don't, I didn't, I could have done more research, I guess. But I mean, you and I spoke quite a bit actually leading up to your campaign because you were reaching out for feedback and perspectives on things.
Yeah.
But let me just look here. Right. So you had what I would say is a very typical first week for a successful campaign. You had a strong day one, then you had about 30% of that for day two,
Right.
and then starting to cycle down. And one version of the world is you sort of stick at this 1,500 to 2,000 range ongoing until you pick back up. And there's another world where you sort of hang out in the 400 to 600 range until you
Yeah.
peak back up at the end. How are you, but it is, you're starting to move into that sort of middle slump period.
Mhm.
How's that been for you? How have you been handling it? What are your ideas?
Yeah, I mean, so I did a lot of research on other campaigns running right now, and other campaigns that we've looked at, and I've been pretty happy with the last couple of days. 47 to 40 backers a day. From my research, at least, you can actually get as low as 10 to 20, even when you get to like day 4 and 5. And I think that's because we're still pretty high, like we're getting a lot of that organic Kickstarter traffic from the site because I'm not sure exactly how the algorithm works, but and it could start to go down because it's now Tuesday and there's more campaigns that have launched. But if we maintain that 40 a day, that I think that's a pretty good 40 to 50. That'd be a pretty great benchmark to hit because, like I said, I've seen campaigns that dip down to like 5 backers a day to 20 a day. Yeah,
without a doubt, I would consider this a super healthy, rock solid
yeah,
campaign you guys are running, right? Even if it did drop down to 20 backers a day or whatever, I think that
yeah,
and you got the project we love, but each news cycle is like the weekly Tuesday news cycle will sort of take away some of your luster. But
yeah,
that isn't to say you won't pick up at the end. But I mean, you're easily in a campaign that sort of at trend is going to end in the 50 to 60 category, and if it's got a big bump or some event or something else, could push up beyond that. So I mean, I think
yeah.
again, assuming your 15K target goal was somewhat legitimate, you guys should be super pleased with your success right now.
Yeah, we're really happy. And we've also been surprised with, I think another thing to add is you have like a media plan of what content you want to create. But for example, we got some coverage that we felt like was just sort of like good karma coverage, or, we got picked up by the Dice Tower, the board game breakfast, also their like crowd surfing video. And so then there was some like mainstream gaming press that we got picked up on and some Facebook groups and things that just sort of happened because we were a part of the community and not because we were kind of planning for them, which was really fantastic and has been really helpful during this period as well. And we have other events and content planned throughout the next couple of weeks as well, which I think will help. And I think that's something we have an idea about what our project updates will be for the next couple of weeks. They're already all written for the most part with some tweaks. So we try to plan in advance and keep the momentum in check and have like those beats whenever we see there's gaps is sort of our idea and what we try to do. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to the extent possible.
Yeah.
Any
So
sort
if
of
it's out of your control.
yeah, but any sort of awareness or beats you can have each day. I mean, I think to some degree or another, at the end of the day, when you're saying like it would be incredible if we maintained 40 backers a day, 40 people isn't that many people. Like that's like you can sort of think about like, hey, I just did that and I impacted 5 people and I have 5 people and I'm a quarter of the way there to 40, right? And so a lot of that's the hustle of the campaign, right? To offset the natural sort of decline of a slump. And then so and so you're gonna go through this campaign, and then you're suddenly in position where you've funded. You got to decide how many units you're going to make. You got your deluxe edition. Are you buttoned up in terms of, do you have your manufacturer? Are you ready to go? Or is that something you're looking at quotes? Like, do you feel confident? I mean, the answer is going to have to be yes, because, you need to, you want to show confidence. But just generally speaking, where are you in that process for post Kickstarter?
No, yeah, we're definitely ready to go. We're already working on getting all of our files ready. Because a big thing for us is actually delivering this ahead of schedule and really setting a strong brand for who we are, and yeah, so that's how we're approaching it. We want to over deliver, and we're doing everything we can to do that.
And you didn't give yourself. I mean, you gave yourself time, but you have a pretty aggressive schedule. I was just looking at that. I like to deliver ahead of schedule, but I also like to give myself oodles and oodles of time.
Mm-hmm.
At 9 months, it's not a little. I mean, that's plenty of time to get it done. But having your file that this is where somebody who has a ton of stretch goals gets in trouble, right? If you're, hey, actually, as soon as the check comes from Kickstarter, we're ready to go. That's ample time. But if you're in a situation where you're like, oh well, we still are doing design changes and we're getting some art, no, now we have to do a new mode, and you chew up that first 3 months post Kickstarter on all that stuff. 9 months suddenly is 6 months, and then it's tight. So it sounds like you guys are in good shape leading into that period.
Yeah, and it'll be of course there'll be things we don't predict. one thing we are doing is we're working on redesigning the scoring tiles because they were kind of designer art still. But we already have some of those iterations from our artist, and luckily he's available. But yeah, a big thing was it's Chinese New Year right now, so we wanted to get everything we could prepared because I think they'll be back in the office once the campaign ends. And yeah, so.
Yep, I mean that's pretty standard fare. You're not going to get a lot until that's wrapped. Cool. Well, we've been talking for a good 25 minutes. Is there any other key thoughts you have about the campaign or process?
Yeah, I think it's been really valuable in the process of just constantly validating our assumptions, and not only just from content creators and other publishers, but also just talking to backers, because ultimately backers are they're really deciding whether your decisions are good or in the best interest of the community. So I think it's been a good process. We've been reaching out to backers directly to get their feedback, and you don't want to over-rotate too much, but I think that's been a helpful insight as well. And yeah, I mean, I think that relationships really matter in any industry, and so my advice to other creators would be try to add value to anyone you can in the industry, and get back, and also get help. We are working with Anna Maria Phelps, who I believe you work with as well.
Mm-hmm.
She's sort of supporting some of our social media work. She's been fantastic, and that was because although we do think we have a pretty good sense of how to promote, we realize that running the campaign and also doing social media work and doing everything else we have going on is a pretty big commitment. And so just trying to manage that bandwidth appropriately and getting the right capability on the team to help. And we'll be growing our team as well, as we go forward, because it can be really easy to take on too much work. I think that's where delays can come as well. If you're like the designer and the marketer and preparing the files and talking to other designers, you really are probably only moving all those balls forward like 10% a day, right? And so getting that network of people to help is really valuable. And even if it means maybe you're less profitable, our approaches will be able to move faster and do a lot more as a studio. And so that's just something that we're thinking about as well, and constantly trying to think of how we can be more efficient. Yeah.
Totally. And just to echo a few of those things quickly, for sure, being active and contributing to the community is powerful in a variety of ways. I think that's always true and something I've aspired to do. Also, until I want to say my 8th or 9th campaign, I was emailing or messaging every single backer of every single campaign, and I felt it was super valuable. The amount of small leads, goodwill, information I got out of that process was through the roof. And it's super manual, but it was super effective if you just add up the value from it. And then, understanding your bandwidth and being able to find people to support you so that you can focus on the key things and keep all those balls moving, because there's so many of them, is super valuable. So, best of luck with the closure of your campaign. I think this video will post somewhat nearer to the end, so if people go and they check it out, or check out the campaign, or check out KickTrack, you can see the moment. We were talking off of day, that whole conversation in here was off of day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, day 9. So if you're like, hey, what were they looking at and what happened since then, you can instantly know, and check out the campaign as well. But thanks so much for watching, and thanks so much for being on.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity, and thanks everyone for listening.
Awesome. Talk to you later. Bye. Hey everybody, Edo here, and thanks for watching Gaming with Edo. Reviews over here on this playlist, League and Insider videos over here on this one. Subscribe, share, all that good stuff. But most importantly, play some great games. Thanks.